Welcome to this edition of the Talk of Simsbury. My name is Dominique Avery. If you looked carefully at the show open, you will have seen photos of newspapers, magazines, and online sources for local news. Some have come and gone, like the Farmington Valley Times and Inside Simsbury. On the other hand, the Hartford Courant has been around for 250 years, but that's changing as they are moving more to an online or an equal online presence. And then there's Patch. Patch is but a shadow of its former self. What does that all mean for you? More importantly, where can you find good local news? That's what we're going to explore today. Joining me for this discussion as we consider the state of local news in Simsbury are Abigail Albert, who is the executive editor of the Valley and West Hartford Press, that's located in Simsbury. Stephanie Reif, who was the editor for Simsbury Patch at its launch, editor of the Farmington Life, and is now a communication specialist for the town of Simsbury. And John Fitz is here. He has worked for several newspapers, including the New Britain Herald, also Canton and Simsbury Patch, and has now started his very own online news source called Canton Compass. Welcome to all of you. I'm so glad you came today. So I was thinking about starting with Patch. Most people I know loved Patch when it first started, and you were the editor, and people signed up for it, and they got it in their email. And then it changed. John was there. A lot of things happened. Anyway, I wasn't there. I still get it, but it's not what it was. So tell me a little bit. What happened? What was the idea, and what happened? Stephanie?
Well, I think, okay. Keeping in mind that, decisions were made in New York.
Right.
We were owned by America Online. But my personal feeling was that they had great intentions, and they had a real desire to do local news in the beginning. But I think the business model, I think that they grew exponentially very fast, and they really didn't do any marketing in the beginning to let people know. It was all word of mouth, feet on the street. Building the sites, we went out and contacted businesses and did as much as we could to get the word out, but there was really no advertising. And I just think that they loaded it real heavy in the beginning with budgets and different things, and then they shrunk when they weren't hitting their goals or their whatever they had expected. And I thought the product was great in the beginning, and I thought if on a smaller scale it might have had an opportunity to grow slower. But they, were coast to coast, 900 sites. They went from 4 to 900 in just over a year.
They actually started in Connecticut, didn't they?
They did. They started in Connecticut, and then it just sort of lost focus because they started chasing numbers, and they started chasing clicks, and I felt that they lost focus because once you start going after that, you become a chameleon. You just sort of whatever's getting the clicks. And I think people respond to good quality journalism wherever it is.
Well, that's exactly what I was sort of screwed up the beginning, but the intro. But that was my idea. Abigail, I'm sure you looked at it too. I mean, it had good local news. You were doing good local reporting, and people responded to it. They signed up for it, and now it's it's a shadow. Yeah. Abigail, did you sign up for it too?
Yeah, we looked at all the Patch sites. Often, being both local sources, had a lot of similar stories, but we watched them regularly to say, well, what are we missing? Because we knew these were also very talented journalists that were in the community. They were colleagues of ours, and I would say since the editors were all laid off, I haven't looked at any of the sites in I can't remember how long, because it just stopped being, and I get a lot of response, particularly in the West Hartford community, where people are confused because they still expect it to be their local source. And when you see a lot of the headlines now, it's got headlines that are from Fairfield County, and it almost scares people. They're like, what, this happened in my town? And then you click it and realize it didn't. And
so, John, you were there at the end, right?
Yes, I was.
So you were, I mean, they downsized, kept downsizing. Stephanie, you left on your own, but you were here, you were at the end, you were running both of them. How did it end, and how many people are there actually writing news or running it now? So tell me how it happened, what happened to you?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of all saw the handwriting on the wall, so to speak, because we knew it was, got a lot of indications, and even some people leaked information that it was coming. So it wasn't a big surprise. My understanding is they kept about 5 people in the state, and they now all do, you know, maybe even dozens of sites. So yeah, they find something that from the Current that they can rewrite a little bit, or Fairfield County, like you mentioned, is a lot of it, and they just post that to all their sites. Or if they get a press release, they will post that or promote a local blogger. So there's not many people. You know, as far as, you know, specifics of what their plans are, I don't know. And, you know, maybe don't want to go into the way they laid us off, but, you know, not to be negative per se. But, yeah, it's like Stephanie said, I think they just tried to grow too quickly. A lot of, when they weren't getting the success they wanted, they had all these program things, like, you know, do a mom's column on a Wednesday, and, you know, rather than do your local news, you were chasing your tail trying to put up this specific program content all the time because it worked in one county and somewhere in, you know, Nebraska or California or whatever. So
I think what Stephanie said, though, is exactly right. There is a market for news, for local news.
Yeah, I agree. I think their idea was great. You live in the town. They hired people that, which can have its negatives, but is mostly positive. You know, you're there, you're invested, you care about the community, you can still be objective, hopefully, but, you know, you're not traveling 45 minutes to go to a meeting and then just going home. You know, you love the town,
for the Current,
cover the meetings, you cry when someone dies, which happened a lot, and I think it's a great idea. I think their ad prices were really high too, so that's not going to help.
So I'm not sure which direction to go, whether to follow you with what you're doing, or whether to go to Abby and talk about, because Abby, you're an editor of sort of remaining local papers. They've been dying. They've been dying on the vine, but you're still there. So how does your model work?
Well, I think that the positives is that, first of all, we are weekly and monthly publications, which is very different in every way from a daily publication in terms of the editorial content you put out, and also in terms of how you sell ads. And at the, you know, in my department, we're all about the editorial, but the bottom line is it is still a business. It has to be profitable to stay open, and we find that our advertisers respond really well to the weekly and monthly model, specifically because we are keepsake publications. So I would say that's part of the draw of it, is that we're doing human interest, in-depth features. You know, some of our papers are the life papers, and that's really what we're all about, is the life in the community and the people. And while I think people really want breaking daily news, they also really like getting to see that insight into the personality of the people in their towns. And so from a broad sense, I would say that is where we excel. But also just on a day-to-day sense, we have really great staff. We've gone to a model where we have, I think, back to more of the kind of roots. That Patch did a great thing in having one editor per town based on the type of product they were. We go to having one editor that covers multiple towns, and they have staff writers that become the face for that community. And that really works because everybody can play to their strengths. You can have writers that are just, all they do is write. They're invested in the people. You can have editors that put a lot of focus into how we package stories, what the photos look like. Are we being strong in every way? We're finding that people are responding to it. And I don't think that I could necessarily define exactly what it is in terms of a perfect science to be replicated elsewhere, but we are getting a great response in this area.
So how come you survived in some others, like what's the Farmington Valley
Times?
Yeah.
I think we put a very large focus on the community and the people that some other companies are not able to do. And I think that while other companies, when times became difficult for everyone with the economy and also for journalism, because the face of it is changing with technology, where other companies saw their editorial staff as expendable because a lot comes at you now with email. I mean, it's less than a second for you to get information submitted to you. And so editorial staff was the first to go. And we have been fortunate to always have management that believed editorial should come first and that the editorial should be great. And based on that, you can sell ads, where I think a lot of other companies have looked to, as long as the ad sales are there, it does not matter what's in the publication.
Makes me shake my head. So, John, let me move to you. You have now started your own little patch in Canton. I'm sorry that we don't have one here, but I signed up and I get your email every morning with a little bit of news, and I just am so sad that there's nothing coming like that from Simsbury.
Yeah, it's
How's it
really
working?
interesting. I think it's going well. The response has been great. I think people, like the Valley papers, it's people just want that local news. If there's a fire up the street or the town garage, meetings, just whatever it may be. I think people really responded to it. I've had advertisers that have come to me wanting to support it before I even had time to go out to them. And just, they really like it.
So, can you support yourself? And can you do all that work? Are you?
I laugh, but
Right.
I think that remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of money. It's not going to be a lot of time. It's going to have to work quickly if it's going to. I'm working on some marketing materials and that kind of thing. But it is, I think writing the news is a full-time job, so running the business and selling the ads is tough.
Okay, so one of the things that I think maybe we should talk about is the cost of news. It seems to me, and some of you can jump in, I'm a very different generation than you, but I have this feeling that young people are so used to getting things for free that they're not willing to pay for it. And
Right.
I don't think they quite understand that getting the news costs money. Stephanie, you're...
I agree with you. I'm a newspaper person, and I still get the Hartford Courant. I pay for the New York Times online. There's value, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. But something that goes along with that, I think, is a lot of people don't understand anymore what news is and what opinion is, and and something that maybe has been fact checked or has some legitimacy versus someone just throwing something up. I think sometimes people don't really get the difference, and so they don't feel like they need to pay for it, and I think it's just sort of a big blur, so they wouldn't know what to pay for maybe in some ways.
Well, that is sort of a problem, though. I mean, when I first started thinking about doing this story, I sort of was thinking, well, there used to be more local news, but it depends on what you define as news. Now, there's so much information available, it is hard to make sense of what's news, what's not news. Does it bother any of you that more people seem to know the stars, pop stars and stuff, than know their senators or their representatives? I mean, there's so much money in entertainment news. Somebody explain that to me. I don't get it. It's just easy, cheap and easy. What is it?
I don't really know.
I don't know, but I will say, I started one of the things I think a site like mine has to do is think of creative ideas. Like I started a GoFundMe site, not that that's that creative, but a lot of people that have supported that, I haven't seen many of the teenagers or really young people support that. It is more their parents. But I was going to say the younger crowds, I think I don't know if they're reading my meeting stories or the planning and zoning, and hopefully they will someday be involved in that thing. But when I was at Patch and did a little recently, I will say that I did have a lot of followers from the high school age. Because if you go to their, Battle of the Bands, the school play, they do appreciate you being there. And that may not be big, important news to a lot of people, but I think that's one area where Patch had the right idea, is like to really cover your community. And all that stuff is important to them, and they do appreciate that,
I think with the pervasiveness of the internet kind of goes to what Stephanie was saying about the lines being blurred between what is news, and I think with teens having so much access to so many social media sites, the kinds of things that get shared on those take over their world, and they forget that there are other more legitimate sources. But I do think it's also an education piece. I've recently received an envelope from a teacher with several letters to the editor written by, I think it was a third grade class.
That's great.
And it was fabulous. They weren't, typically we like our letters to be about local topics. They were not local topics, but I was just so fascinated that these kids took the time and that they were realizing the seriousness of sending and having an opinion and having an avenue to express it at such a young age. And then I agree with what John said about, still we go to cover a school play or a game and you say to a kid that they're going to be in the newspaper and they're so excited. And so I think that somewhere they do grasp the importance of it still, but we're in an overwhelming world technologically.
Yeah, I mean, it is overwhelming. And I'm concerned with sort of a generation that didn't grow up with that technology. I mean, sort of older people too. I feel like I'm going to count myself as among them. Where do we go? We're not as facile with technology. And I don't know, it used to be easier when we just had Hartford Courant and you got a good local story. Although I have to say that the Hartford Courant, Simsbury is now being covered by a really good reporter, which is sort of wonderful. So you're now working for the town. You're working on the other side. Are you trying to place stories?
Yeah, definitely. I think.
And how are you doing it?
Well.
She's the enemy now.
Well, that's one of the things that's very interesting is when I first started, I was like, oh, send me your media list, who you send stuff to. And, it was about this long. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, but so basically there are the outlets that I get in touch with and I, I'm just on the other side now. I just think of what I appreciated and what was helpful to me, and I try to duplicate that and get it to the people. But the other way to get news out is to try to go where people are, whether that's on a Facebook page, a poster in a library or something. And so it has to take all these different forms, just a flyer, a tweet, and this, and maybe lead them back to something longer or whatever you're trying to do. But it's challenging. It's definitely challenging when there's really not sort of the real easy focus like there used to be, and as many outlets. So it can be tricky because some of the audiences, they're pretty small, they're pretty select. So you have to just find them and go to all of them and try to get the information.
Right, exactly. I post. I have a Simsbury tourism site, and I post on our SCTV site. And it's a lot of work to do that, to come up with something every day, and then you don't have that many viewers, and sometimes it gets discouraging. I wanted to put in a plug for SCTV. I mean, I think that we serve a really important function, and I'm always sorry that there aren't more people who know about us. But I think we're. I mean, you said something earlier that Canton and Farmington have a much harder time getting news. I mean, it is possible in Simsbury to watch a meeting and to actually see what the zoning board did, or the planning board did, or the board of selectmen.
I think that's great too, and I think media can work together more often than they even do. Like in Canton, they do tape the board of selectmen meetings. They're the only ones they post online. But something like Simsbury TV is. I have a lot of, and this maybe goes back to the younger readers though, and I resisted this for a long time at Patch, but I absolutely found it to be true. Most people are reading a paragraph or the headline, and that's it. And in fact, they'll sit there on Facebook and ask you questions that are answered in the story. And a lot of them. So, unfortunately, not a lot of people want to really know what the zoning commission did.
Right.
But if it's something like you have that online, and I even did this with the Simsbury Patch a little, here's a blurb, here's the action they took.
Yeah.
Right, but if you really want to hear all the conversation or know every detail, link to the SCTV site or whoever it may be, and that person can
It's all so much work though,
thing.
because I posted the other day on something that the Planning Commission did. I didn't watch it live. I was doing something else. I watched the whole meeting
Right.
in order to find out what happened, or at least, and the meeting was longer. It had 2 parts, so I had to watch the whole thing. It took a lot of time as a volunteer. I mean, and you guys are trying to make
Right.
money, and it's really, really difficult. And then there, as Stephanie said, there are all these places that you have to go to, like Simsbury Moms Unite, and you have to keep. It's just a lot of work to reach people. Sometimes I think I get discouraged.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, Abigail, you face the same problem because you have so much coming at you, right?
Everyone
we
wants
do.
to be.
Yes, we have so many. It's so many people, so many groups in so many towns, and it's we want to cover everybody to the best of our ability, and you sometimes feel bad for the groups that don't have a more vocal spokesperson, because the groups that have someone who's very vocal, we're constantly hearing what they have to say and getting their news and working with them, and it becomes a balancing act of remembering, well, who haven't we reached out to recently? Because for publications like ours, as much as we enjoy the town news and the meetings, and we know that's important to get to the residents, we also want to give exposure to all those different groups, and yeah, it's quite overwhelming, the amount of
Stuff that comes
stuff
into
that
you.
comes in.
So how do you make editorial decisions? Do you make them alone?
Oh no, we have a large team. So the publications all have different editors. I primarily handle our weekly papers, the Valley Press and the West Hartford Press, but with the Life papers, there's different editors for the different publications. They have writers underneath them. We make a lot of decisions together. And part of the way that we work is also it sounds like there's a hierarchy of staff, but when it comes to decision making, it's a team effort. But in some ways, it also comes down to space. Well, the benefit of something online is there is unlimited space. The difficulty with a newspaper is the space is just not unlimited. And so I find myself having to tell people, particularly who submit information, a variety of things may be very worthy of being printed, but I have to tell people I'm running 3 weeks behind. I got 75 submissions this week. I can only fit 20 in the paper. I'm 3 weeks behind. I promise we will get it in as soon as we can. And then you run the balance of when does it become old news. But I think with community publications, to a certain extent, the kinds of submissions you get are not old news.
Old news works. So what do you advise people who want to be in your paper?
Send us your news, and don't be afraid to call and follow up, because the times I feel worst is when someone emails me 4 days later and says, you didn't email me back and tell me if you got this. And I say, I'm really sorry. I get 350 emails a day. Can't answer them all, but please call, please follow up. I promise it's important to us. The only advice I can give is that if you think it's news, we want to see it. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, we'll have that dialogue with you, but we want to see it. We want to see your submissions because we're your community newspaper.
So do you want news releases? Do you want photos? What do you want?
We love photos. We love photos from community groups. We definitely want to get those out there. What we would really prefer is that if you have an event or you have a story, that you contact us and let our staff writers work on it, because that's what they're there for. It goes back to what Stephanie was saying earlier about having that news that's been fact-checked and somebody that has done it according to, perhaps a set of editorial policies. So as much as we do appreciate it when someone waits till after something has happened and they give us kind of the play-by-play, so to speak, we would love it if you contact us beforehand and let us work on it, because we want to come out into the community and we want to see you and we want to work with you.
John, how about you? Do you see a Simsbury Compass in the future?
If someone wants to start a Simsbury Compass, I would love it. Absolutely love it, because I think that's a way to, I'm part of an independent media network now, which is more of an association, because Canton Compass is my own business and that kind of thing. But if people started, Simsbury or Avon Compass, who could work together on the advertising, still be independent with the stories and that kind of thing, and I think could reach a lot more people that way.
So have you heard of any volunteers?
Maybe Stephanie. Come back to the other side.
So Stephanie, you have a new job. It's fairly new?
Yes.
So what do you do for the town of Simsbury?
At the moment, it's part-time, so it's, but it's basically, it's a fairly new position, so it's defined, but it can change. But so far, it's been things like the annual report, helping for items that go on the website, working on a newsletter that went with the tax bill, helping publicize Solarize, helping publicize fan favorite. So it's, and then it could be something really quick. You know, when Simsbury was again #1 in the bike friendly, getting that on the website and things like that. So it's kind of all over the place a little bit, but it's great. But it's just, you know, the other side.
So I ran into you in the police department?
Yes.
Are you working part-time there too?
Yeah, I've been part-time in the police department. That's ending.
Oh.
That's ending. But yeah, I was doing some part-time records clerking there.
Oh, okay, because somebody said, what's she doing in the police department?
Yeah, just
It's a little
trying to
shady.
pay the bills is what.
So we have 2 minutes left. I always like to let people talk a little bit about who their personal life. You know, you live in Canton. You've got a lot of hobbies. If you could just talk just a little bit, tell us, the viewers, a little bit about yourself.
About myself? Well, I do play music. I really love that. You know, mandolin and guitar.
He's great.
And that's a lot of fun. Certainly fly fishing and kayaking and outdoors pursuits when I have time, which seems to be less and less. But
So
love doing that kind of thing.
And people should sign up
Canton's
for
perfect.
for Canton Compass. How do they do that?
Yep, right on our website, you can go to get our email alerts, and there's just a couple fields to fill out, and yeah, that's it. And you can always follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. So.
Abigail?
Well, I do not live in this area. I live in Cromwell, which actually, given the fact that I am pretty much a workaholic, is convenient because we also cover all the way down to that area of the state. So I can be everywhere. Everywhere is within driving distance, but work is a big part of my life. But I am married and have a dog, and his name is Bailey, and he's fantastic.
Stephanie?
I live in Simsbury, and I'm married, and we take advantage of the bike trail and kayaking and a lot of things right in Simsbury, and you know, pretty busy just working and things like that. But yeah. So.
Well, thank you. Our time is actually up. When I first conceived this show, I thought it was going to be a bad news story, and it's starting with the reduction of local reporting in the big newspapers like The Current as they reduce their staffs because of online competition. But as we've seen today, it's not black and white, good or bad, but it's in flux, and for older residents like me, a bit more confusing. Thanks to everyone here at SCTV for getting the show on the air. Thanks especially to my guests for joining me today, Abigail Albert, Stephanie Reif, and John Fitz. And finally, thank you for joining us again. If you missed any portion of the show, you can find it on our website at simsburytv.org. I'm Dominique Avery. See you next time for the Talk of Simsbury.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.